Well, my studio guest today is Mr. Steve Andrew. Steve has been a DJ and nightclub manager, owned some fair rides, and now works within the theatre industry. So I'd like to welcome Steve to the show. Hello, Steve.
Very good afternoon to you, Phil.
And how are you today?
Not too bad, actually.
Good,
Not too
good.
bad at all. Oh, sorry, turning away from the microphone. Having a quick look out the window, just having a look, see if it's still raining.
Is it?
And no, we're right out there.
Fantastic. That's the lovely thing about Penzance. You never know, because we're on the coast, don't we? And they just come straight in at us. Right, Steve, so if I may, you've had quite an exciting life so far. Could we start to talk a little bit about your DJ years? I know you did it from 1988 to 92. How did you get into it, and what kind of show did you have?
It actually sort of started when I was about 13, and I actually started working in pubs, and I was sort of just basically glass collecting, doing a little bit of bits and pieces around the pub, things like that. And we used to have sort of DJs come in and do functions, and it just sort of started from there, really. So, it just sort of fell into it, very much so.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of DJs do say that, I must admit. And we had Roger Collins on last week. I know you've heard the interview, but he kind of got into it with his mates as well, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Did you do a lot of private function work, or, as opposed to club and pub scene, or was it equal, or did you do more of the function side?
Well, it sort of started, like we said, doing sort of pub work, and then moved into function work. I had a lucky opportunity at the time to actually work with Gary Kenton, who was up at Camborne, and he had his own sort of sound and lighting company, and sort of used to do daytimes and bits and pieces in there, and then basically sort of DJ in the evening with the other boys as well. So it was a good sort of learning curve. Yeah. Good way to start.
You did a lot of work with a company in Penrith called Curno Entertainments.
Yes.
That was a lot of high-end jobs, so you'd be your weddings, your birthday parties, a little bit more professional, if you like, as opposed to working the pub scene. Just going back to Gary Kenton, I just recall, you did some install work with him as well, didn't you?
Yeah, there were sort of bits and pieces. I mean, we got involved with a lot of the venues around, obviously a lot in Penwith as well, and obviously the original loft over in Truro. Yeah. We did the initial, or Gary obviously did the initial, and we were just sort of there as T-boys, really. But Gary did the initial install over there, and it's sort of, like I said, it was a very good learning curve. Yeah. A good way to sort of start to learn the industry. Yeah,
so obviously doing your DJing from the late 80s, 88, so there was, around the 80s, especially late 80s, there were a lot of cheesy tracks. Do you recall any in particular that you would or wouldn't play? Or
well, it was the real Stock Aitken and Waterman period, but I mean, I to be honest, I enjoyed playing any of it. It's I've got a very, very sort of varied music style in what I like, and I'll literally listen to anything. So it doesn't matter. I mean, at the end of the day, when we were DJing, we were there for the crowd, not for ourselves. So it was nice just to play a few tracks, a few bits that you like to play yourself. And then obviously when the requests were coming in, that was great because it helped to feed the night. Yeah,
definitely, yeah. So you did, if I recall, because I remember at the same time, I did go out on a couple of gigs with you. You were using vinyl at the time, I think, at the beginning of it. It was the old Gerard decks. Were they called the Gerard decks?
Yeah, there was sort of Gerard decks. I mean, I went on the Citronic decks and never could afford the Technics, so everyone, all the posh boys had the 1200s. Yeah. But no, I just kept it nice and simple.
Yeah, so you started off decks and then obviously moved on to CD and so forth. Yeah. So did you actually enjoyed your time as a disc jockey?
I did actually. Yeah, it was a good time. I mean, it's I just class it's another chapter of the book sort of thing, and it was a time that I enjoyed. It allowed me to move on to other things, and it was a great. And I wouldn't necessarily want to go back to it, but it's definitely a piece of my life sort of thing that's made me really get my teeth in. I'll be all right. Made me sort of part of what I am. So
yeah. Was it just mainly Cornwall and Devon, or did you go further up for your work?
No, it was. I did actually have a chance to sort of go off and do the cruise ships, and also I had a chance to do some function work up in London. Yeah. But it again, I just sort of chose a different direction and moved into the clubs.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Do you remember your first record or album you bought or played as a disc jockey?
I mean, obviously, I got sort of various records from being a kid upwards, sort of thing. But I think the first one, actually, when I was DJing, the first one was in the charts, and I remember going to Plymouth and coming back on the train with a 7-inch vinyl record in my pocket. Was actually Bon Jovi, "Living on a Prayer."
Yeah, great track. Great track.
Still a classic track.
It's still being played by, as I imagine, many DJs every single weekend.
Every party set in every club.
I know I'm one of those DJs, so I can't complain. Did you ever have a preference to music for your own personal choice?
No, I mean, like I said earlier, it's basically a case of I just sort of listen to anything. Just depends what the mood is that I'm in. So it could be anything from sort of classical to hard house sort of thing. Really, it's so varied, so varied.
Yeah, around the same time as your DJing, maybe even coming to the end of your DJing, you joined Hospital Radio in Truro for a little while, and I think this is where we met, wasn't it, through Hospital Radio?
Yeah, it was.
What kind of do you remember what kind of show you took up to the hospital and did?
Well, the format was just very relaxed. I think it was. again, another part of the sort of like the learning curve, really. I mean, this was before the sort of commercial stations really hit Cornwall. And it was a chance to sort of try your talent somewhere else, really.
Yeah.
And it was nice you got the chance to sort of go up and visit the wards and sort of make your presence known up there.
Yeah.
And obviously there was outside events that were going on, things like that with it as well. But I actually wasn't there long enough to get involved with those.
I recall we did have a bit of a giggle, didn't we? The shows were very entertaining.
It was very relaxed. I think we'll leave it probably at that. But,
yes. Definitely.
It was a bit of fun.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So, you did some work experience. I'm not sure of the year, Steve, but you did some work experience with a very big radio station that used to tour the UK many years ago. I don't think they don't do it now, do they? Could you tell us what kind of stuff you did for this big radio station?
What it was basically in 86, 87, was 2 years. But it was a case of, as I was still at school at that point, we then had the whole sort of theory of work experience coming into play. So what everyone was doing was, obviously it was the first year, nobody had done it before, nobody was used to it. So people would actually sort of ring their uncle up and they'd go off and they'd be an electrician, they'd be a plumber, things like that. So I just thought I fancied a little bit something different, and I sent basically a letter up to London, got a response off it saying that there's not a problem, I'm actually doing some work experience on a touring show that was going around.
Yeah.
And basically went down there, sort of did a little bit of rigging, a little bit of moving stuff around. You're there as a steward as well. So it gave you a bit of sort of insight into event organisation.
Yeah.
So no, it was a lot of fun, and it was nice working with what was sort of a national station. So.
Yeah. Right, if we can, let's move on to your nightclub management. Now, you started with the Berkeley Centre in Camborne. You were there for about 5 years. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences and what every day would bring to you and the weekends and stuff like that?
But again, I mean, the jump really from DJing was into that. I mean, this was the same point where I actually sort of got offered to do, or I was thinking about doing the cruises with Juliana's. But it was a case of Roger, who obviously you had last week for an interview, basically came forward. I'd been doing some function work and bits and pieces at the club. Between himself and Steve Quintrell and Dave, that was there at the time, as the duty managers and a licensee, basically came up and offered that they were looking for a trainee manager to come through and sort of like learn the ropes and take it from there. And luckily, I got the chance to do it. Yeah.
The thing is, with your, during your time there, you've seen a couple of facelifts. You saw the top floor change from what was known as Clouds, wasn't it, to a more kind of modern look. Mm-hmm. Did you have any say on the sound and lighting and the structure of the room?
No, I mean, everyone just sort of bailed in, basically. I mean, we had sort of daytime staff there. We had the evening staff there as well, sort of helping out. I mean, it was a good little clique of people, sort of thing, that actually basically got together and really sort of cared what they were doing at the time. So, and that was when, again, I mean, even at that point, okay, we had the Twilight Zone as competition. But there wasn't that many large venues, especially large capacity venues like this one was.
Yeah.
Everyone just sort of basically sort of knuckled down and got on with it. And I think everyone was sort of pleased with the results.
I was saying to Roger last week that at one point, at the peak of the club's time, you could boast over 1,000 people per night on a Friday and Saturday night. And that's an amazing thing. I don't know of many clubs nowadays that can actually boast that. Do you? No. So that, of course, for those who aren't sure where the Berkeley is, it's now known as the Corn Exchange. It's basically had lots of facelifts and lots of change of name, but it is currently the Corn Exchange. So after the Berkeley, you moved on to the original loft that was in Truro, and that was its original place was basically where HMV is pretty much now, isn't it, in Truro? So what was it? Was it much of a change from